It will come soon, I think. Okay. Perfect. All right. So welcome again. And we will start this session going through the motivations and the methodology that are embedded in the partnership, the why of this tool was built, the logic behind the tool as well. This will be done by Maria. And then we will go through the tool itself. We will deep dive into the tool so you can see how it looks like, the features that it has, and so on. So I welcome Maria here to the floor to start with the motivations of the PMP.
Thank you, Mar. Hello. Welcome. Thank you, Mar. And thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks for your presentation, Mar. Mar has been heavily engaged in the PMP development, particularly in the last years. And she knows the details of it, and she will brought you to a nice tour around it. Okay, so the motivations for this tool. We see that there are a lot of WOPs happening all over the world, different programs, different funders, different reporting systems used. And it's very difficult to get a grasp of what's actually happening in the practice. Only the people engaged, of course, as partners, facilitators, funders, can really have a sense of what's happening. And GWOPA is making a lot of effort to gather that information, to be able to centralize, analyze, and then come out in terms of advocacy, dissemination, communication. Now, what we still felt at the time when we started to think of this project is, okay, we really need to make an effort to centralize the information, to really collaborate with actors more intensely so that we can have a stronger voice. So we believe better managed WOP information is going to lead to greater impacts of WOPs. And why do we think that? For once, because, of course, better information is going to lead to more effective and efficient projects. We're going to have a more united WOP alliance with a stronger message and voice. And ideally, that leads us to get more funding and more actors engaged in the WOP practice. Some of you have already been in contact with the tool, especially the EU WOP partners. This might be familiar. Eventually, the vision of the PMP was to have all the WOP projects globally happening visibly in a centralized platform that is GWOPA-led, but it's owned and tailored by the WOP, by the alliance and the practice, okay? Now, it's not only to be able to see projects happening all over the world in one place, which gives already a very impressive image, but it's also to improve the visibility of results. So this tool does not only enable WOP partners to have a shared platform that they can work on, even if they are miles and kilometers and oceans away from each other, but it also is tailored to emphasize the type of results that WOPs are more prone to deliver in the short and medium term. And these are capacity changes within the target utilities. We are trying to simplify as much as possible the methodology and the user-friendliness of the tool, and that's a compromise that we always have to keep. Because eventually what you see is that a lot of projects have been reporting on outputs, but that is not really informing about what's happening on the mentee. So we really need to make an effort as a community to communicate more accurately about what's happening on the ground. And of course, learning. There are so many projects implementing similar processes all over the world with similar challenges, and the opportunity is there for not only for a mentor and mentee to work together, but also for all the mentors, all the mentees in different projects working with similar improvement areas to really exchange. No, how, these guys have already gone through this. Okay, let's contact them. How have you done? Which system have you used? Okay, and for that, you've probably seen another sessions that, of course, having this visibility and knowledge about where are projects happening, what are they doing, and later on connected to the GWOPA online WOP community, where you can exchange, where you can participate in debates, where you can post tools, questions, etc. That is ideally supporting later on that learning that happens across projects as well. And ultimately, for advocacy purposes, we are, this morning we had the finance session. Of course, financiers want to see results of projects. And we know there are results in projects. However, we are not able to communicate them very well so far. So this is as well a very important effort that we are all trying to do to communicate better what is achieved in WOPs. So what's the tool? The tool, we call it Partnership Management Platform because it's supposed to support peers managing the project. Historically, you've seen that depending where the funding came from, if the mentor is the one that receives the funding or the facilitator is the one that receives the funding, maybe they are in charge of planning, monitoring, the heavy lifting of paperwork, reporting, etc. That's counterproductive in terms of the alliance and how both partners engage strongly in the project. What we are intending with this tool is that both partners are able to see what's happening, to report what's happening, to argue and discuss before the results, the planning and the results are in the tool. So it's an online-based platform where you can include your planning, monitor your results, report, of course, based on automatically on the information that you've included while you were reporting, export, download, edit your report so that maybe you have to report not only to, in this case of the EU program, to GWOPA, but also maybe you have to report to other donors or other partners, other stakeholders. So you can edit as well the report. And eventually, of course, and I like to come back to that map image, eventually what we would like is that that's a possibility for any WOP partner to use it, and we'll be able to provide training so that that is conducted in the best possible way. We're also very well aware that water professionals are not monitoring experts and are not necessarily very familiar with how do you report to donors, what should you emphasize or not. So we want to make this as easy as possible, and that's what the tool is also trying to do. Okay? Now, the methodology behind the system. For those of you who have been engaged in the system, you've seen how it works. For those that haven't had yet the experience, I am going to explain here a bit of the theoretical assumptions and the logic behind that, okay? All right. In terms of planning, what do we ask for when in the tool? Okay, the obvious would be activities and outputs. What do you intend to produce eventually at the end of the year, at the end of the project, at the end of the program? Now, what do we do with capacity? With capacity, we know at the end of the day, capacity is not, when you develop capacity, is not something that comes from outside. It's a process that is an endogenous process. It happens in an ongoing basis within the water utility. Now, the water operator partnership and the activities within the WOP are inputs that the utility is going to receive, but it's not the only thing that is happening. So what happens here is that we are looking into capacity through a framework where you just have to plan openly, okay, I want to improve the capacity of this water operator in this improvement area, say physical losses, typical one, and then later on, when time comes to monitor, then we'll give the frame for you to see, okay, which elements of the organization have you changed? We'll be looking at that later. We would like to promote and to propose to use KPIs, standard utility KPIs, as a guiding light, but not as a straitjacket, because we know that KPIs, or most, at least at the utility level, are difficult to improve in 1 to 3 years, depending, of course, on the investments that you have and the kind of inputs. So we're not saying let's not include it in the planning or let's not include it in the monitoring system. We're saying let's include it, but as a guiding light, not something that should oppress us. Let's focus on the organizational capacity, and that will lead eventually to the performance that we aim to achieve. And then partnership health. We know that of course, technical assistance project or typical technical assistance projects are busy with delivering something, no? Deliverables. WOPs, to some extent, you can argue that are not only responsible for deliverables, but also for the outcomes that should come out of those deliverables. And what is the determining factor, one of the determining factors in terms of if an output becomes an outcome, or if a training, and let's say with an example, a training becomes gain individual skills, applied skills, what's a determining factor there? The process that partners follow to really reach that output. If I give a training tomorrow because I think GIS, ArcGIS is relevant, and I just arrived to the utility, okay, let's give this training, fine. Who is attending? I don't know, this group of people, fine. And I do not take into consideration what's the level of development at that time in that utility. Are they ready for that kind of training? Am I supporting with actual software that they can use afterward? So many elements. Then the training is not going to be of any use. Okay. So the how the partners work together and the partnership good health in order to do that, it's also very relevant. Monitoring. We want to monitor for accountability, to account for results to donors, which is very important. Of course, we always are concerned about that. But especially and particularly, we want to monitor to improve the efficiency and the relevancy of the projects. And we know that at the time of the planning, very frequently, you paint a picture of what could happen, but it's never the reality afterwards, never. So we want to emphasize that the adaptive and learning ability of partners throughout the project and the flexibility from donors to allow for that is really crucial. So that is also an emphasis that we want to put in the tool. And that's why you will find tiring open boxes where we are asking you to explain why and why not, no? Because that can later on, if you agree as partners that those are the obstacles that you're finding at that time, then you can reflect on that and you can put solutions later on. So we want to monitor processes as well as results. And we want to encourage partners to really make an effort to monitor capacity outcomes beyond outputs. We know that it's a step further. It's not something people is generally used to, but we are trying to set it up in a way that is as simple as possible. Okay, now participatory planning and monitoring. I think if the partners that are here from the EU WOP program have already engaged into one monitoring exercise, and some might have done it in a participatory way, and this is really very encouraged because if only one partner is engaged in the monitoring exercise, it's really a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity to create shared understanding of where the utility is at the moment. It's a missed opportunity to get to know better each other, and also to keep revising the priorities of the project. So the format of a workshop is what we would be encouraging and facilitating, of course, if needed, when it comes to the 2 times per year that partners need to monitor. Okay? Flexible use and open to all. Why we're saying flexible use? Because we have felt that in some cases, when we know that there is a wide range of projects, of WOP projects, some last a year, some last 10, and still they have a commonality of wanting to develop capacity on a non-for-profit basis, peer-to-peer support. We want to be able to support and to help all of them. And the tool is also adaptive and flexible in that sense. You can use it with a very minimum effort, describing the project so that your project is on the map. That's all. You send the information or fill it in yourself if GWOPA allows, gives you a user, and that's it. You are on the map. Another use that you can do is put your activities and your outputs. That's the bare minimum that any donor is going to want. Now, we would encourage all the partners to give that step further and go into monitoring capacity, because that's going to be the game changer when we are able to communicate about what happened in terms of capacity if KPIs have not moved. But we can say, hey, but all this happened in the organizations, and you can see how. Okay, we'll go into that now. Another issue that I mentioned briefly before is, of course, a lot of people are not familiar with the terminology of monitoring and evaluation, and rightly so. It's not the experts in water utilities are maybe not everyone facing the day-to-day task of having to monitor and evaluate on what's an output and what's an outcome, and how do I differentiate them, how do I make them smart. It's not the day-to-day. So that's something that if we want to reach the vision that we mentioned before, we really need to make an effort to develop those skills as well within the WOP community. Just very briefly, of course, inputs, financial, human, and material resources used for the intervention, activities, the actions taken with those inputs. Outputs, we can in a very simple way, think of outputs as the information about the activities that can be a bit more tangible. I've given a training on a GIS system. Okay, 32 people trained in GIS. That's output. You know, why? There has been a review that the colleagues from GWOPA have been doing to try to get the feedback from users, and some of the partners say you duplicate a lot between activities and outputs. They each have a purpose. The activity, you have a time frame. You have an action, and one activity can have one or different outputs, and the outputs ideally are quantified. The activity is a more generic element of the project management, while the output intends to be quantifiable so that you can also see how far you are anytime that you're monitoring, how far you are of achieving your goal for that year. So they all have a purpose. And then outcomes, which is, in our case, of course, we would think of outcomes as capacity and as KPIs. We are discussing, of course, that KPIs are difficult in the short and medium term, but let's look at capacity and let's see what happens with capacity. Okay, I've said already all this. Now, when I mean, all the WOP community in general, we are facing that challenge of being able to monitor capacity and to monitor it in a way that we can communicate it. What we see a lot of the times, especially, I mean, all throughout, when you report on outputs, projects, evaluation report on outputs, fine. Maybe a lot of the projects are very good at achieving what was planned, so they are very successful in delivering the outputs, but that doesn't mean that you've actually made any impact, or positive impact in the utility. Because a training, for example, just a very simple case, does not necessarily have to lead to an increased knowledge or skills by individuals, let alone applied new knowledge or skills by individuals, for example. No? So here we want to emphasize that outputs are important because that keeps you, you make a plan according to the reality, according to the needs, priorities that both partners together jointly define. Let's see how we produce during that year, but in how, and I come back to the point of before, in how you deliver those activities together with the partner, you're going to be able to make that a capacity change or not. So we really place a lot of emphasis on the process, and we'll go back to that later. Of course, you will see a lot of donors requesting us to inform about standard utility KPIs, and of course, it's to be expected. But let's not undervalue and undersell what a WOP can deliver because we cannot see KPIs in the short and medium term. And sometimes we seem to shy away from saying, no, there are no KPIs improvements. Of course, there are no KPIs improvements because that takes years, because capacity development is a slow process, and you have to look at many different components, and that builds resilience and capacity of a utility to be able to eventually, when those improvements happen, to also keep resilience of the utility, maintain the capacity and the performance with time. So we really need to make an effort to show what happens in the organization. What is this about capacity? How can we do it? And there are many ways. We've just selected one approach. They are more complex than looking at outputs and looking at KPIs. That's a bit the difficulty. They are more complex. It requires an extra effort. But there are approaches. It's always a matter of simplifying reality in a way that you have a good balance of trade-offs. And we're just going to present what we are proposing here. This I commented already. So we are going to look at I'm going to go directly to the capacity, and later on I go to the process, okay? To continue more with the line of thinking that we are presenting right now. most of you who have been engaged in monitoring, evaluating, reporting about projects, you see that what we mentioned before, a lot of narratives about what happened, the outputs and then narratives. And this is great, and when you start and have the time to read it, you are amazed by what has happened. And this is really necessary, especially for the learning and adapting and making projects efficient and relevant for the utility. However, it's very difficult to communicate that you've achieved so much by a narrative. What we're proposing here is just to move away, try to distill what's the narrative, try to distill what's happening in the project, and communicate it through what's happening in the organization. And there are many organizational models out there. We just picked one and adapted it that we thought was relevant. And we're looking at what we can call more strategic elements. We look at more operational elements and then the individual elements. And this goes from leadership, organizational culture, mission, strategy. Then you look at structure, management practices, systems, or at the individual level, tasks, motivation, application of knowledge. We've adapted this one. This is from Burke and Lidwin. We've adapted it, and you will see that in the tool, to incorporate others that we thought are relevant for the day-to-day of what utilities. So, and you say, okay, but how do we do this, no? How do we transform that into this framework? This is more or less how we would be communicating about what happens. So what the unit of analysis would be an improvement area, say water quality, asset management, any other of the improvement areas that we are selecting in WOPs. And basically what we are doing is the same, but just communicating a bit visually, and that's something that you can trace with time. This is an oversimplification of what we have in the tool, but just so that we can see, all right. And here we have only put colors, but there is a quantitative value and other elements that we are explaining in the tool. But what we want to emphasize here is, okay, well, an organization is about skills, motivation, financial resources, infrastructure, equipment, information. A lot of the WOPs, the first thing they do when you start is, okay, gather a good baseline of what's happening on the ground. Information is already a very useful capacity outcome of utility. Without the information or proper information, you cannot move on, you cannot plan, you cannot really make decisions. Systems or organizational structures, if a WOP is proposing to create DMAs in order to create a caretaker approach for physical losses reduction, that's a change in the structure. Okay, you can submit a plan. Is a plan already a capacity outcome? What would you say? Because we could think of it as a capacity outcome, but I come back to the point of before. It depends if the process of developing that plan has been done together with the partner and it is relevant and anchored in the partner realities, or if it's done from, I don't know, any country that it's supporting another with the reality that it's not really what you find on the ground. So that's what I was commenting before. The output can be directly an outcome, but it depends on the process that you followed in order to reach that output. Okay, so that's why we really would like to make a lot of emphasis on the process, and we will come back to that later. Just to give some examples. Ideally, we are able to trace it with time. So here we just put some examples. No, in the asset management one, the first year you see skills and information, typical. No, skills. You do trainings, you do analysis. Second year, and diagnosis. Second year, maybe organizational structure, systems, equipment, staff motivation, skills. Okay, and there you see. Okay, well, we keep evolving the capacity, all these elements, all these capacity domain are changing thanks to the activities of the WOP. And maybe eventually in the third year you see a change in working routines. No? But those working routines do not change in a day. You needed all the steps before in order to reach that change in working routines. And eventually, of course, if you have all these progressive changes in the organization for several improvement areas, eventually we will see that reflected in a KPI. But that takes time again. So let's try to oversimplify to some extent, but it's always about trying to use a frame that works for us. This is what we are proposing here. So hopefully it's not too complex to make that step. What we are proposing is say, okay, when you're reporting on an output, say what we were mentioning before, the plan, no? Non-revenue water reduction plan, is that Can I already say that I've delivered my output? Is that already, can I put that as in systems, as a capacity system enhancement in my working area? In some cases, it will be yes, of course. The mentee has developed it together with us. They are fully owning it, and that's part of now the New Year work plan, for example. So then you can already say, and of course, we rely on the honesty of partners clearly here, and that's all we can do. Here, everyone has to be as honest as possible to see to what extent this has to be useful or not. Because, of course, any management system relies on the validity of the information. Rubbish in, rubbish out. So that's beyond our hands. And we hope that everyone follows that kind of integrity within the tool. So just those kind of aspects I would like. I'm going back now to the process. So sorry for changing the order, but as I was explaining, I thought it was better this way around. So we looked into the outputs. We are used to outputs. We've now looked into how we are proposing to look at capacity. And I've mentioned many times that the process is super important, that if we don't follow a good process, it is probably the outputs are not going to lead to the capacity. So how are we looking at process here? We are proposing 2 elements to look at process. One is eventually with WOPs, the most simple element that you can think in WOPs is, okay, you're co-creating knowledge, and through co-creation of knowledge, you're leading to change. And of course, many other things need to happen, no? New knowledge and new expertise from people from abroad, for another company, comes to any utility in need or in demand, and they start working together. The first thing, you identify a need. And then from that identified need to a well-established, improved working routine, there are different stages. And that's what we try to do here. Let's see how these partners, where are these partners? So first stage is, okay, specify needs, okay? That's not straightforward. You do like a first mission to do a bit of a fact-finding mission. I've heard that in some cases are called, and that's fact-finding. That's more on sometimes on the proposal level, very superficial. But then you really need to identify what the real needs are working together, and that takes time. And that's already a very good progress within the utility. When you have been working together as partners and you've identified, okay, well, these are clearly our needs for this first year in this improvement or working area, which is asset management. Okay, that's already, one step done together. Next step, when the individuals, or next milestone that we are looking at here, when individuals already have some kind of knowledge, when there are conditions created for change, but change is not yet visible, no? You've done some trainings, you procured equipment, you managed to change an SOP that is delineating a bit how this process should work, but you don't see change yet. You are creating the conditions, but change is not there. That's another good step, another milestone. Work has already gone there together before you reach that point, and that's a milestone again. Then the next one is I see changes. Now, also, I see changes now in working routines. And the last one is I see changes and the working routine is working very well. No? I'm satisfied with how the working routine is now established. So it seems that until the only visible thing is the last, in terms of achievement, is the last stage. But all those steps in the middle are also very valuable and are important for us to know, okay, yes, I know that this utility is working on financial management, but I don't know if they are in early stages or they have already, established well working routines thanks to the WOP. That already gives us a sign. That doesn't need to give us a lot of details, but it gives us a sign. And here we have a map. I don't know why it's not, just a visual a bit like, okay, well, if we are able to say that all these colors are different working areas and then you have different WOPs, well, we have a visual of, okay, well, if the orange line is utilities or WOPs that are working on financial management, I would see that, those two utilities are actually working on financial management and they've gone through all these stages already. I don't know what has happened. I don't know the capacity, but I know the capacity build. But I know that they've gone together, peer to peer, already through the diagnosis, equipping the utility with tools, with knowledge, with management systems, whatever. And now they are in stage 3. They actually are seeing changes happening, okay? This is one way that we have to look at the process, and the other way is the partnership health. This is a terminology that we're using to refer to how are partners partnering. How good of a partnership is that in terms of, okay, how am I transparent enough? Am I communicating? What are my meeting processes? Am I accountable and mutual to the other partner? Am I working on a partnership as the best way possible? Or we just have the agreement and then we deliver here, there, but then I am not transparent, because it takes time to really become a good partner and to really, develop those capacities. With the partnership health, we only want to encourage partners to reflect on some elements that are useful in terms of partnership management and partnership integrity, I would say as well. And you might see these as principles, but they are really practices, like the transparency. If you're transparent with, one example, with your information, you're going to be able to go into identifying what are the needs in a much quicker way. If you have good relationships, if you are transparent, if you communicate properly with the frequency, with the right people, the knowledge is going to flow much easily, the knowledge that you want to create. So these are some elements that eventually, at the end of the day, can help utilities and partners reflect, okay, how are we doing? And this doesn't need to happen every month, maybe once a year, twice a year. Hey guys, how are we doing? When the monitoring exercise comes, how are we doing? And it is difficult to talk about these things. It is sensitive, but sometimes it's very necessary in order to, yesterday we were presenting with Jeannie a paper on the weight of relationships in projects. And sometimes a conflict, for example, it's a blessing if you address it. It can bring partners together. So these issues are sometimes very difficult to touch upon when reflecting about it, or to be honest, it is also a cultural thing, no? It's very difficult to tell to the other, well, I didn't like this or that. So we have to see how to approach this. It's not easy, we know that, but at least there has to be a bit of some reflection or encouragement. And if needed, of course, there can be a party supporting, more neutral party supporting in that kind of exercise. So anyway, that's another element. Okay, so we looked at both the process and capacity, and we just, I think I'm finished now, just to say that the PMP intends to be an evolving tool, an evolving platform. It just started. The EU WOP program is the first using this platform. It's GWOPA-led in the sense that GWOPA started its development, but it's alliance-tailored. Ideally, eventually, we can make this tool a very impressive set of projects that can communicate a lot, not only to the converted, let's say, to the WOPs community, but also to others that can actually buy in as well on the potential of this approach to really contribute to access to water supply and sanitation. And I'm going to give the floor to Mar, who is going to drive you through the tool. Yeah? Thank you, Mar.
Thank you, Maria, for such an insightful presentation. And before going already into the tool and give you like a sneak peek, let's say, of the tool, let me just tell you a little bit about who's using the tool right now and who has shown interest from other stakeholders to use the tool. So right now we have 184 users of the tool. There are 23 WOPs that are currently being planned and monitored through the PMP. And we have 2 other programs that will be starting next year. One of them is UNICEF, who will be with their WOPs together with GWOPA, also be using the PMP. So we also have the Asian Development Bank, GIZ, and WaterAid, who has shown interest on the tool, and we will be doing demos, and we will start working together to see how we can build that relationship. This was already mentioned by Maria, but let me just quickly go through these advantages, main advantages of the tool. As Maria mentioned already, we think that this tool is really important because it facilitates communication between the stakeholders that are part of a WOP. So basically, it's a tool that is online, and people from different places on the world can go in, log in, and support with the planning and the monitoring of the WOP. So basically, for example, we have people from the mentee, the mentor, and even, for example, a platform, a regional platform, that are all together working on this project, and they can all log in. They have their users' accounts, and they can start planning and monitoring their activities, outputs, and outcomes. Also, as Maria mentioned, this is really important because as an online tool, which is gathering all the information about the WOP, it can be very useful. Also because we have seen that in several parts of the world, for example, in Latin America, there is a reality of transition a lot of people all the time, no? So it's really helpful for them to have this place where they know all their reporting is being held, on all their activities is being stored, and they will not lose this information. So it's also a way to very effectively share the information and the knowledge between partners, because sometimes the report stays with the mentee, sometimes it stays with the platform, and in this way you can upload these documents and they all can have access to this kind of information that can be for them as well very practical in the future. So, and as Maria mentioned a couple of times as well, accountability and participatory is the two words that are key for our tool. So these are the, let's say, parts of the tool. The overview part, which is the general part where you can enter the information about your WOP in general terms. For example, a quick description, where is it located, who is involved, how much is the budget, what's the budget of the WOP, what are the platforms that are being involved as well, if any platform is involved, the working areas that you will be addressing, the SDG targets as well that you are planning to address, and the project members, of course, who is going to be doing what. And we actually, in the tool, we will see it later on, but you can choose who is actually only a viewer, because you can have a user that is only viewing what's happening, but you can have also a user that is actually putting in information, and there's an administrator. It can be more than one administrator, but you have this option of having administrator, who is the person that is actually giving access to other people, right? Then you have the planning and the monitoring, the key part of the PMP, where you will be, we will see it later on, but here is the place where you will be putting all your activities and outputs, the outcome performance, the capacity outcomes as well, and the partnership health. We will see it on the tool right now, but just to mention like the parts not to be lost. In the dashboard is the most graphic part of the PMP, is where you will be looking at the summary, let's say, of how your activities, outputs, and outcomes are moving. Are you reaching the target? Are you not, graphically to see this? And this could be actually really nice also for all the WOP partners. The reporting, of course, we have a automatic reporting side of the PMP. Automatically it's done, but of course what we have done is to make it editable. So you can download it in Word version, and then you can edit it, because we know that in some cases, for example, you need a report not only for your platform, if you're part of a platform, but you also need a report for the funder, and for, in the case of you're working together with GWOPA, for GWOPA. So you can have one report, but then adapt it to the different necessities that there might be. Okay, so we think that this is a nice feature that the tool has. And you can have there the history of all the reports that you have created, and of course download it again, and so on. And you can also attach pictures or any type of document that you want to see it attached. The history is, I think it's key, because we have, after we have pilot, let's say, the tool this year, it has started with the EU WOP, with these 23 WOPs that I was saying, 21 from EU WOPs and 2 that is all from Latin America, that they are already using it as well. But the really nice thing about this part of history is that you can see who has done which changes, because it seems that this is a very important issue for all partners. They are getting to know each other at the beginning, so maybe they need this kind of insurance of that everyone is doing their part of the work while monitoring the activities, outputs, and outcomes. So in history, you can see who did what, exactly what changes, and so on. This can bring together also and like have more transparency on the work done in the tool. Some of the key features that were already mentioned, I will not repeat them, but I think that, again, it's really nice to have the joint access from different stakeholders. I think that one is key, and you are designing, of course, the activities, outputs, and outcomes. You're monitoring the progress, and you're visualizing the progress as well as having this automatic reporting. As I was mentioning, there are 3 types of access and roles to the PMP. We will see it on web, but again, this is what I mentioned just now. And finally, I will say, let's go into the tool so you can see it, how it looks. And later on, I will come back to the presentation just for one last slide. Okay. So let's go in. Here is the PMP. Oh, you cannot see it, eh? I have it in my screen, but it seems that you are not seeing it. Let me see if I have to close this. Yes, eh? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is how the PMP looks like, the first screen, let's say, of the PMP. You have in the map all the WOPs, all the projects that are going on right now with the tool. You have here these filters that can help you out search for other PMPs projects that you're looking for. An important issue to mention here is that the information that you are inputting from your program, from your WOP, is not completely open for other people. Only the most general part of your project, let's say the description, which stakeholders are involved, your working areas and SDGs, those are the parts that others can see about your project. Otherwise, only the users of your WOP are the ones that are actually seeing the activities, outputs, the monitoring, and so on. So it's your project. It's not open for others. So, but this tool allows you to have a little bit of information about other WOPs, only the most general information, and can help you create networking or maybe ask about something. For example, you can search by the name of an organization that is involved, and so on. Okay. So if you're, for example, part of more than one WOP, this normally can happen. For example, when a WOP regional platform is part of the WOP monitoring, they are part of more than one WOP. They are part of 3 WOPs. They are part of 2 WOPs, and so on. It's the case, for example, for water links. They have 2 projects going on with the EU WOP. So here at the right, they will see their 2 projects. And they can enter one by one and see, depending on what kind of users they are. If they're contributors, they will contribute. If they're only to see it, they will only check it, and so on. So this is a test WOP. This WOP actually doesn't exist. But you see here in the overview the general information that I was talking to you about. Who's involved? What are the partners? So there's a lead mentor. There are several mentees, for example, or there are more than one mentor. That happens a lot as well. Who's the supporting organizations? The financial contributions. This part as well is private, the financial contributions for the others. And the PMP access and roles as well. Here you will see the list of people that is contributing, viewing, or administrating the project. Okay, you have the list of the working areas that this WOP is working on, the SDG targets, the platforms as well, in the case that you're involved with a platform. Then you have the planning and the monitoring, which was the part that we were talking about. So how is this structured? We have the working areas that you previously selected. If you have 10 working areas, then by working area, you will be inputting the activities, and by activity, the outputs. So this is the structure that we have. And it depends, of course, on the program. It depends on the project. It depends on several things, of who's involved in the WOP, how detailed you're going to be in the moment of inputting the information. Okay? Here you also have the option of uploading the means of verification. You will put the target of the output, you will put the target of the activity, and so on and so forth. And then again, you will be in the same style and in the same structure, you will be monitoring what you planned. Then we have the performance outcomes that are done by the KPIs, let's say. We have 67 KPIs in our list right now for you to choose from, and we have several themes that are being touched by the KPIs. We have water supply, of course, but we have also waste water. We have some about rain. We have some others about gender, social inclusion, and so on. But we are very open to hear for your necessities about other KPIs. We do ask if you come with an idea of another KPI that is not on the list. Of course, it can happen. It's normal, but to come with a clear idea of the KPI and with also a measuring unit. Because if we don't come with a measuring unit that is predetermined, then we cannot compare anything. It's not comparable. So that's why it's important always to come with a measuring unit. Okay? It's also important to know, in general, like in activities and outputs, and in outcomes, in performance outcomes, and so on, we have not only the numerical part of the PMP, we also have the descriptive part. So you have the chance there, as Maria said, it's really important. You have the chance to be as detailed as you want. You can have a very long description and being very detailed about it. You can be also detailed about the progress. How did you reach that new point on the monitoring, and so on? Who was involved? What were the risks and assumptions? What didn't happen that you thought it was going to happen, and why you didn't reach actually the target that you were looking for, and so on. So this is a tool that it's mixing the numerical part, but also the descriptive part. Not only describing the number, but also describing actually how the activities went, how the output was tried to achieve, and it did or it didn't. So After the KPIs, we have the capacity outcomes that we already mentioned, but it's really important, and more we are hearing from the funders how important for them is to hear about these kind of results. It's not only about the performance outcomes that sometimes is really heavy or really difficult to reach in a WOP that it's 2 years long, for example. Maybe it's easier whenever a WOP is longer, but it's not always the case. When a WOP is more short, it's difficult to reach an outcome performance, but maybe these capacity outcomes are more in a short term, reachable. And this is also the type of outcomes that the financial organizations are looking for to see the results of the financing. Okay, so I will show you what's here on the capacity outcomes. It's a predetermined part of the PMP, so it's not like you have to plan it. It's done already, and the idea is that you will monitor it, but not only the ones that you planned to happen, not only the ones that you already knew that were going to happen. For example, you already knew that individual skills were going to be improved because you were going to do these workshops on the non-revenue water. But also to be aware that this kind of capacity outcomes could happen without planning. For example, you see a staff that is more motivated. It wasn't actually part of your plan, but you see it and it's causing like an effect on the staff. Or maybe you see like a change of a mindset on the managerial part of the operator. You didn't plan it, but you see it happening because of the exchange of so many things, of skills and so on, or conversations even. So in this part, you will have the chance of not only saying the overall stage of the working area. For example, are you still, first of all, you will say, okay, I'm in the diagnosing and action planning part of this working area, and inside that stage, I will also have the chance to monitor it. So I will say in the organizational strategic part, I see a change in leadership. I see a change also in the operational. We made a change on the structure while the WOP was happening without being actually part of our plan, but it happened. So you will do it as well. And then you will be able to say as well how much of these changes were because of the WOP. As well on the KPIs, by the way. You will have the chance to say, okay, this KPI changed, but as we know, when a KPI changes, it's not because one activity, it's not because we did one thing. Probably it's because we did several things, several activities, several things that we did for that to improve. Not only a new plan, but also we did workshops. Not only a workshop, but we also had new investment and so on and so forth. The important thing is here to describe why do you think the WOP was part of that improvement. It's not that you can only put a KPI progress because you are certain by numbers, but a very complex model, that it was cost-consequence because of an activity of the WOP. But you know that one activity of the WOP was part actually of that improvement, and you know why, and you know the sequence of the things that happened and why actually this WOP helped this KPI to change. So it's a matter of saying it. It's a matter of communicating it. All right? It doesn't need to be 100% because of the WOP that the KPI changed. But of course, everyone is interested to know if it did, how it was related to the WOP, and in which degree. So again, this is a matter of course, of being clear about what's happening. Okay, and in this case again, yes, you can say the contribution that is perceived the change, it was the WOP part of the contribution, what happened there, and you will be able as well to put comments and so on. I think this is nice that we have by working area, even though some of our partners have said it's too much. It's too much to have by working area. I think it's better to have it one for all the WOP. and we are seeing the way of implementing of doing it a little bit more simple, and maybe for you to choose if you want to do it for the whole project or you want to do it by working area. Because in some cases, the working groups are so different that you actually need to do it by working area, and you will see the pros of doing it. But in some other cases, you don't, and you feel that it's okay to do it for the whole WOP. Again, with the partnership health, the same. First, let me go through it. In the partnership health, as Maria was mentioning, it's this side of the tool where you will have the opportunity probably to, first of all, communicate to each other, have a chat, say what's actually working, what's not working, what are actually your activities that are your ways of communicating, your ways of having a meeting, your ways of doing all these kind of things that are working or not working. So we have seen several really interesting things here in the PMP already in partnership health. For example, there are working groups that are saying, we created a WhatsApp chat. This has helped us a lot to be really clear about where we are, how we are doing, to be more familiar to each other even. I even heard that they had a cooking class together, so it helped to the bonding of the WOP. But yeah, these kind of things, like these kind of practices that might be helpful to the other working group. You know, for example, in one working area, they are doing great with meeting and coordinating, and in other one, they are not doing great. So here you have the possibility to see why one is doing great and why is not doing great. Maybe it's the communication problem, maybe it's a meeting processes problem, and so on. So here you will have the chance to monitor it and to share it with all the team members, which I think is really nice. Okay, I think we are almost done with the time, so I will try to be really brief. I will only show you that here is the reporting part where you can download and you can attach pictures and other type of documents. As you see here, I have just one test picture to put it there, and videos as well. You can add videos that it can be reached by other of your partners, and then you have like this single site where you can all see it. And here is the history that I was talking to you about, where you can really see detailed who did what and how did they added value to the monitoring and the reporting. Okay, just to finish, I wanted to show you and to just let you know that we have received the first batch, let's say, of feedback from the tool, from the EU WOP partners, which has been really nice having it. It's really good for us to know where we can improve the tool, and what is being hard for the partners to use, and what is actually being really, really appreciated. So what's coming? Basically, what we want to do is to upgrade the tool. So not only GWOPA is the one using it as a program for the EU WOP, for example, but also, first of all, it's already open for other programs to use it. So if you're even a platform and you want to use the PMP tool for all your WOPs, you can already do it. What we want to implement, and this is on our target, is to have this analytic module per program, where you will be able to see the cumulative, let's say, information about all your WOPs, the aggregated information, data analysis, visuals, and so on of your program. So it will not be only we will not only have a dashboard by project, but also by program. Basically, this is the message. And of course, we are seeing these more detailed, more small things that have brought to our attention about the report, about some things that maybe are repeating or maybe you wish to have it more simplified and so on. We are seeing it and we are looking at the best way of having maybe several options to be as detailed as you want or maybe to be a little bit more general about it. So with this, I think I will finish the presentation and wanted to thank you for coming and also tell you that if your organization is interested of having a demonstration, a demo of the PMP, please let us know. You can write an email to the one you see there, and we will happily talk about it. Thank you very much. Yeah, do you want to do the announcement? Come here. A little announcement.
This afternoon, well, in a few hours at 3:30 in the Kleine Saal, is it? Kleine Saal. We are doing a session on the same, but a bit with more practical exercises on what do you on how do you use the tool, but more on the conceptual basis. What's an output? What's an outcome? What's partnership health? How do you do the monitoring, etc. Okay. Well, thanks everyone.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good to see you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
The first was, because we work with a lot of municipalities and we also provide solid waste.
Yeah, okay,
In
yeah.
addition to wastewater and drinking water. So what's the process to try to get people in upstream manage
Solid waste, we don't have it, but I think that it's the same thing. The thing would be only for you to tell us the KPIs
Okay.
that you are trying to